All right. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Coffee Q&A and Happy New Year. It's 2025 for the very first episode of the year. And I thought that, what are we going to do today? I was thinking this morning, I said, what should we do? What should we do? And I thought, or last time I was thinking, and then I realized, there's some easy topics we can talk about because there were some great comments from yesterday's video. So how are you all doing? Welcome back to the show. Happy New Year to all of you. And, okay, so I was trying to find out, YouTube has a phone app, of course, but one for the creator side called Studio, and trying to find the way they designed Studio and for the phone versus the way that it's on the desktop is very different. So it doesn't work the same way. So it's a little bit harder to find the stuff that you're looking for. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so we're going to start off with a question that Naomi asked from yesterday's show and says that, are you using an 18-gram basket and dosing 21 to 23 grams? Yes, the answer to that is yes, we are, because here's the thing. If we take a basket, this is a typical double shot basket in a La Marzocco portafilter. Kent, happy New Year to you. Mom, good morning. How are you doing? And, I've got so many of these. I no longer remember which brand I'm using anymore, but we've got quite a few. Some from La Marzocco, some from VST, some from other manufacturers. But the general basic thing is the same. So many, many years ago, Ernesto Illy and his company came up with the standard of 7 grams of coffee for one shot of espresso. They then came out with this. I don't know if this came out. I don't know. I think this was probably first. This is what we call a single shot basket, which has this kind of funnel design, and it's designed to hold 7 grams of coffee. You can see the obvious difference here, right? Dylan, happy New Year to you as well. Now, this is the original design or original style of. I'm not focusing. Focus for me. Focus for me, baby. Okay, so this is supposed to hold 7 grams. Then they came out with a double shot basket, which was actually shallower than the one that I'm having right here. But the double shot was meant to hold 14 grams. And while these are, and then eventually they came a little bit larger. Like I think, that's a blind basket. Let's see if anything small. Maybe not. Here's another portafilter. Naomi, happy New Year to you. Yeah, see, here's a different design. This one's a little more tapered. So this really is kind of where we evolved from this to this. And these are designed for 14 grams. And as time went by, people came up with a new design for this double shot basket, still with the idea that it's double shot and 14 grams. However, you can actually fit a lot more coffee in these baskets than just 14 grams. You can do up to 18. You can do past that. In yesterday's video that we released for the end of the year, I talked about Paul Bassett, who is one of the early world barista champions. And Paul back then, this is like, wow, this is 20 years ago in 2025. He was proposing that we adopt 35 grams in a double shot basket. Now there are triple shot baskets that are deeper, but he was like, I think we were just using a double shot basket that day. So there, you can fit a lot more coffee in here than the specified double shot 14 grams, or even up to 8. You could go beyond 18 grams. And as you can see, I was putting in up to 23 grams yesterday or the day before. So there's a lot of space for more coffee. And it's one of those things you just kind of have to play with to see what you like. Now, I've subscribed to the 21 grams, which is technically a triple shot, right? I've subscribed to 21 grams for a double shot for many, many years now, for 20 years. And I like the performance of the coffee that way. It doesn't mean that that's the only way to do it. It's just one way to do it. And, even as an operator, or as whether you're an operator or you are an enthusiast at home, you kind of have to also balance, right? Like 21 grams is technically 3 shots, or 21 grams is 21 grams, right? There's only 453 grams in a pound. And so if I'm using, let's say, here, let me use my calculator because I'm not. So if we take 453 and I divide that by 21, right? Oops. If I divide by 21, that's going to give us just 21 shots, 21 pulls, right? If I'm using 453 divided by 14 grams, I get 32. Wow, that's a lot. That's like 10 more shots. So here's the thing. So 10 more shots, 10 more enjoyments of coffee, or in many of you guys' respect, I know a lot of people are using 18 grams divided by 18, 25. So here's 25 grams. So you've got 18, 21, 25, 32 grams. We're talking now somewhat significant differences, right? So if let's say you're charging $3 an espresso, and you can get, if you're charging for $3 for a double shot, you can now make, what is that, $3 times, if we're charging $3, so we're making $66. Yeah, $63. $63 for at 21 grams. We're going to be making 32 times 3. We're going to be 32 times 3. We're making $96. Wow, that's a lot of difference. Minus 63. So we're making $33 more from the same amount of coffee. Which actually, that's a lot of money. You should be kidding. So the thing is, that are you committing? And so there has to be a reason why you commit to something like that, because the difference obviously is on a financial level is quite significant. Now, from the perspective of a home consumer, an enthusiast, you're getting 25 shots out instead of 21. So you're going to get 3 more shots out of your pound of coffee. So you're extending your money for greater pleasure, right? Now, again, it goes back to how much are you committed, or do you enjoy a 21-gram shot versus an 18-gram shot? So it's just a matter of understanding the balance between the two, because, and I understand as a home enthusiast, you want to extend your dollar as much as possible. That's super important, right? Especially in modern times. Naomi says, how in the world would you fit 35 grams of coffee in that basket? I don't know. Like I said, those people are crazy, right? I guess you could go finer, but then the finer you go, the greater the resistance you're going to generate. And then the greater resistance is going to be compounded by the fact that you're putting more in there. I mean, at the end of the day, the results were, spurless at best. But I tend to not. I tend to view Aussie coffee theories with great skepticism and haughty derision. Oh man, good times, though. Good times. So, but so that's a whole tangent I hadn't even thought about talking about. But so that is one thing you can do. So if they will hold more. They will hold more coffee. It's just a question of whether or not you want to. Like it does, in either respect, it costs you more to go to higher dosages, right? Okay, so what else did we ask here? Naomi says, I also noticed you made a mound of coffee mound in the middle before tamping. Does that make the middle more compact? No, not. So the idea of the mounding, right? So let's make some espresso while we're here. We're not going to use that. We're going to use this. I love this stainless steel portafilter. Just love it. Oh, I need the spout. Where did I put the spout? Okay, so Let me get the coffee prepared here. I actually didn't go by the warehouse today, so I don't have. I'm not going to purge it because I'm almost out of coffee. So we're just going to roll with it. Okay, so like here we are, right? This is it. Okay, good. You can exactly see it now. As you can see, every time that I dose, and this is going to be true, I think, for both doser grinders as well as doser-less grinders, the way that it comes into the basket is going to slightly vary every time you do it. So you're going to always want to adjust, right? So as you can see here, it mounted to this quadrant of the basket, and it's lower here. So we really want to distribute, right? So I just like to push it around, right? Because I want to make sure that we're getting enough coverage of the coffee throughout the basket. And if I use something like the spinning device, the distributor, yes, it's going to compact and it's going to swirl around, but I want to make sure that it gets all in there. I just like the idea. Plus, I don't have to like carry extra apparatus, and I don't have to buy anything, right? I can just finger, right? Just use my finger to work the magic, right? And so I like to bound it up, because the idea is that early on, we were really concerned about channeling, right? Channeling is something that will typically occur on the edges of the basket, right? You'll typically see channeling, and you'll find like little holes that are burrowed through the puck typically on the edge, almost never in the center, but always typically on the edge, and it pulls it. What happens is water follows the path of least resistance. So if there's any kind of gap in the matrix of the coffee that's being put together, it will exploit that and flow through that faster, and you'll get uneven extraction and not so pleasant flavors. So the idea of moving this around to the center is to help spread the coffee out, right? Hopefully in all directions. So we're going to compact here, but where's it going to go? It's kind of the idea is that it's going to go out this way, right? Go out like that. And even later, this is the C, what do they call it, this C tenor or something like that. I can't remember the name of it anymore, but this is, I was going to say this is one of the more modern tempers, but it's not really modern anymore. This is now 15 years old. So this is the original style temper, just straight up 58 millimeter flat stainless steel. They added these concentric rings to help contain the water from spreading out across the surface of the puck. I think that's what it's for. But they added a bit of a chamfer. You can see the slight chamfer here. And some of them had a little bit more of a harder chamfer coming in, emanating out from the center. But that idea is also there to push the coffee to the sides against the basket wall to prevent channeling. And so that's really the whole kind of idea behind this mounding, right? And it doesn't have to be that tall. And this is actually lower today than it was in the last couple of days, mainly because I'm running out of coffee and I need to try to conserve as much as I can so we can get multiple shots out of today. All right, so let's go and let's see what happens. So we've got our setup. Let's use the, no, let's not use that. We'll use the flat temper, right? Because we want to we're going to see if this will help. I mean, let's just press it down and run around the edges. Good. Okay, there it is. Nice and clean and smooth. That's what we kind of want. Take off the wings. Now we need to flush again. Right? Make sure you want to flush. And you can see it's kind of like, sputtering, or you can hear that it's sputtering. Now you have to kind of balance, how much water you're going to let flow through. You need like several ounces, but then, you only have so much in your reservoir. Oh, that flow is not bad. Now that time I actually stopped it, not necessarily because I saw that there was any kind of fluttering, like I mentioned, fluttering in the fall of the espresso, but today I didn't really notice that. What I did, I just kind of wrote it till I started to feel it. Like really, that shot was totally like, I'm watching, I'm seeing it move, and I'm trying to I'm just getting a feel for when to stop. And I just decided that, that's the right moment. The volume looked good. Crema looks kind of all right. So we got reddish brown crema, and you can also see here, right, there's little white dots. Yesterday in the live stream, I mentioned the appearance of blonding. And the appearance of blonding is the moment that you're finished. It's the coffee talking to you, telling you that it's finished. And here it is. The coffee is telling me that it's finished. It's like, there it is. 2 little lighter blonde dots. Now, if you let it run, the blonding will increase, meaning that it will become more and more pale compared to the reddish brown crema that is here. And that will begin to get larger. And so this is what I was saying yesterday was that whatever parameters you have, like for us, it's 21 grams, 1.5 to 2 ounces of total volume in 24 to 29 seconds. What we want is this sign to appear, this blonding that tells us that we're finished. We want that to happen with that level of volume, somewhere between 1.5 to 2 ounces and between 24 to 29 seconds. If we can get those parameters to hit and get the color that we want, then chances are this is going to be a good espresso. Like, for example, this espresso right now, it looks like this. It looks good. It looks like we had good timing. I would be very okay with serving this to you because it looks like it would be a shot worth serving and a shot worth drinking. Coffee Cove, Happy New Year to you as well. And Yomi says, my New Year's starting off with me back to using my Bambino Plus for lattes since I tried DIY on my Profitec espresso machine, and oh no, oh, that's terrible. So this is what you did on your New Year's? I hear you. I did not go out myself. Like I was up till like 3:30 in the morning, but I was actually in the garage working on like a wood project. I'm making these like workbenches or workbench, and it's like it's become a very meticulous process this time around. So lots of detail work for not even something that's very detailed. It's just that I'm very poor at what I'm doing. So I must measure, cut, remeasure, cut, remeasure. It's really terrible. So I hear you on that. Okay, so let's see. Nobody says today's crema looks a bit darker. Yes, so definitely it's a bit darker than yesterday. And this is really kind of like where I like to see the color of the espresso, of the crema. I think that's a really nice range to be in. So let's have a taste. And oh, yeah, there we go. That's nice. There's even a little bit of effervescence I feel from the crema on the palate, or maybe that's just effervescence left over from last night. Oh, yeah, there's that cocoa powder character from that Guatemala. Oh, that is lovely. Okay, that is way better than yesterday. And you can tell just by the color of the crema that was better than yesterday. So let us find something to pair with our espresso. And I have this here for you to check out. Sorry, I don't have it here for you to taste. This is what we call Biko. And Biko, B-I-K-O. And this is a Filipino dessert made from glutinous rice, so sweet mochico-style rice, short grain sweet rice, brown sugar, coconut milk, and basically you boil it, and you cook it down until it reaches this glutinous-y state. And then you take you add this. This is called latik, L-A-T-I-K. And latik is something that is more of a condiment. You basically take coconut milk and you cook it down like brown butter. And you know how brown butter the milk solids will break down and it will separate from the oil, and then they will eventually like turn brown and fry in that oil. Well, same thing to make latik with coconut milk. You just put the coconut milk in a pan and let it heat up until it becomes this joyous, nutty. Oh God, that's really nice. Now, right now, it is coconut milk, coconut oil based. So when it's cold, it does coagulate like this. But when you have it, you can warm it up, and it's all like oily, glisteny, kind of like, you could just sunbathe with it. So I wanted to show you. So this is something that Filipinos will eat traditionally on New Year's Day to celebrate the new year and to augur good health and better life for the coming year. It's very similar. The idea, I think, is very similar to this cake that the Chinese have for Chinese New Year. And now the name of this cake escapes me, and I can't remember. But basically, it is like a glutinous rice cake that they make down. I think they grind it, and then they mold it. It's not made with brown sugar, but they mold it into like fish, and then they give it as gifts for like it's in a fish shape, and then you slice it and then pan fry it. That's really good too. But this is what we have in Filipino world. So basically, you take this, and we cut out some slice. My aunt made these, so I kind of hijacked it. So I took the whole. I have to return it. I can't just hijack the whole thing forever. I would like to, but that would be very not so sweet. You can be very copious with your. I like it better when it's warm or at least, not below room temperature. Ooh, that's pretty. Okay, we're gonna do a little thumbnail. Oh, speaking of thumbnail, we do this. Ugly thumbnail now. Okay, so you have this latik and let's go back to that. Biko with latik, and you just kind of, it's lightly, it's like, most Asian desserts, lightly sweet. It's got that chewy, what in Tagalog, in the Philippines, we call makunat. And makunat is one of those words where I understand it. You tell me, it's makunat. I understand. I get it. I'm a little bit of a loss at the accurate translation. It's kind of chewy, but not just chewy, but also with resistance and gooey. Not gooiness, but not gelatiny. It's makunat, and I don't know. Maybe one of our other viewers that has better language skills than I do can explain the difference, but or the translation. This is a combination I've never had before. So yes, when you mound it up, the idea is that we're pushing the coffee out to the side of the basket to help, create even resistance. Like, that really is what espresso is about, is creating resistance within the basket so that you have even extraction, right? Like I said, any kind of deficiency in your process that results in any kind of like weakness in the matrix of resistance against the water will be exploited by the water and will lead to, disappointment, gnashing of the teeth, things like that. Yes, it is quite tasty, Naomi, quite tasty with the espresso. And then Naomi says, some words need a paragraph to guess. It's strange because I don't really speak many. I don't really speak most. I don't have any true. I'm a typical American. I speak English, and beyond that, I have modicums of minor capabilities in some languages. But like to be 100% conversational, or even like to be 60% conversational, is like it's something that I just don't have. Like I can fudge my way through in the Philippines because there's a lot of English being used as well. I can fudge my way through in Mexico or Spanish-speaking countries because I have a little bit of that. Maybe a little bit in Japan because all I had to do is bow and No, probably not. Probably not. I have my Suica card. That's all I need. Just go around and nobody has to. I don't have to talk to anyone. Nobody has to talk to me. All right. Well, there was another question I remember in your comment there, Naomi. You're asking, what does it mean when the puck comes out soupy and wet? Okay, so let's go back and have a look at our puck here. We're going to try to recreate the soupiness. So right now we have this puck, and it's pretty nice, right? It's all dry. It's very firm, right? That's really what I look for. Is I want to have this kind of experience, and it comes out. Like you see the ridge there a lot more. Again, this ridge is the impression of the dispersion screen from inside the group head. And it's all, like, it's nice and compacted, so it's nice and together, like it's not crumbly. And I have to give it a little bit of force to break it open. And you see in the inside cross section, it is very dry overall, right? No. And this is what we want to see when it comes to the puck. And as we talked about the basket is clean. There's no residual oils left. So that's really another great sign to you that your shot turned out well. So if you're in the situation where you're making shots for your loved ones or your friends or your people that are visiting you at your house, these are some great telltale signs to know if your shot is on the money without having to drink their espresso. Okay, let's one of the best ways to illustrate this, I think, is just going to be to underfill the amount of coffee. So let's have a look at that. We're going to grind some coffee. At least I think that's going to be the ideal way to demonstrate this. If you have good technique, so there's, again, if you have good technique, that typically doesn't happen, or it hasn't happened to me in a while. Good technique and the right quantity of coffee. But as you can see here, the mounting is much lower here. Like it's kind of concave in there, or it just kind of doesn't even fill in. So again, and there's a little bit of boulders from the static. So we're going to push that around. Again, we're pushing it around. And I'm going to take off a little bit more. This is typically a lot less than I normally do. And this is a lot less coffee than is what is typically on, that I'm typically using. And the grind is not set to be used with this amount of coffee. So actually, I should have measured our, so 600 grams is the total vault weight. What was it? I think the portafilter is like 580 something, 509, almost 590. I think that's what it was from the last couple of days. Well, we're just going to roll with it. Now, I have just kind of leveled out the tamper or the basket. And so we're just going to go in here. We're just going to give it a little bit of a light twist. I'm really kind of like shortcutting this to see if we can recreate the wet puck. But the puck overall is relatively flat and clean, and it's all kind of ready to go. Definitely lighter because I can feel that there's always some resistance when I normally make coffee between the basket and and it comes out super fast. Oh yeah, that's done. Already got some of that wavering. lighter looking crema. I'm gonna bring that over there. And let's have a look at let's have a look at the crema first. Very light in comparison to the last shot, right? Okay. Okay, so maybe soupiness, okay, comes from, I'm gonna think that soupiness will also may come from, now that I'm looking at this result, perhaps too fine a grind. So that soupiness, it's too fine. So there's too much resistance. So it stays wet. Honestly, it's been a long time. So let's have a look at this puck. I can press down on it and it gives, right? Like if I press down really hard, you can really see the indentations in the puck, right? Because there's so much more space. What's happening is that after we've compacted, and I didn't compact it as hard as I normally do, I really gave it a light compaction with the temping. But what happens is that coffee, when it hydrates, of course, expands, right? So it gets wet and expands. And that's what's happening here. There's so much space right here between the basket, the bottom of the basket to let's say this thing is the dispersion screen, right? So we're putting it right up against the dispersion screen, right? Because this rim here is what compacts against the gasket around the dispersion screen that creates the seal that forces the water through now, right? So this is all here now. The way that I like to do it, I like to put 21 grams. So that 21 grams means that the amount of coffee that we're putting in there is actually pressing up against the dispersion screen, right? So when it hydrates and expands, it really doesn't have much room to grow, right? It's kind of compacted. That's why the cookie is so tight. In this case, with less coffee, maybe maybe 14 grams or whatever we put in there, we had 600 grams, right, total? We'll measure it out in a moment. There's more space in the basket for the coffee to swell. So that means that we're going to have more lift and more space. So where the matrix is like really tight when you put a lot of coffee, it's looser. It becomes looser because it has more space to grow, because there's probably a little bit of tiny headroom between the top of the puck or the top of the compressed coffee and the bottom of the dispersion screen. So that's going to have room to expand. And that's why you get this level of compaction. Does that mean that it's bad? Not necessarily. So it still can come out really nicely, clean and whole, and sometimes it will come out. I can feel it feels a little bit more delicate as far as will it break like that? It just broke, right? So I did give it a little bit of force. I didn't have to break it open like I did with the last one. And when it landed, it cracked into two because the structural now it's crumbly and falling apart. It's not as structurally. The structural integrity is not as solid as the last one, mainly because the amount of coffee, there's a lower amount of coffee and less compression and compaction of the coffee into a bit. It's just like making mud pies, when you were young. It's kind of like, you have to, the more you compress and the more you put, the more solid it can be. Now let's also have a look here at the basket. Now it looks like we stopped it at the right moment, and what that right moment means is just that it's extracted everything that it has to extract, right? And we're just at that right point of extraction. So let's look here. The crema has already broken, so it wasn't as strong as the last crema, right? The color is a little bit lighter. It was definitely more dramatic. It looks better now here on the edges. It looks closer to this one, but okay, let's taste. We have to taste. Again, everything goes back to the taste of the coffee, because all of this really doesn't matter if the coffee ends up tasting great. Definitely brighter, more astringent, less body. Oh, comparatively, it's terrible. Oh, yeah, they're very different. And this is just the difference between how much coffee we put in. Now, we didn't change anything else, right? We changed I didn't give it quite perhaps as thorough a temping as I did for this one. But the coffee is the same coffee, different amounts of coffee. So that's going to be one of the big differences you may encounter. But sorry, I was not able to get the soupiness. But when I say if you haven't seen it, that's really actually a very good thing. When you get soupy pucks, you will know, because it will look like sometimes there may be even a little bit of water left, residual water left inside the top, because it just didn't have enough extraction. Oh, no, he says sometimes I always use 18 grams for my espresso, and sometimes it's fine, and sometimes it's soupy. I tend to think that soupiness, now that we're talking about it and thinking about it, I would say that I would tend to think that soupiness would be more a matter of too much resistance. So there's water that hasn't gone through for whatever reason. I think. Then he says, let's say you're correct and it's too fine and water is channeling, and I'm left with a bit of water still sitting on top of the puck. Do I grind coarser and add more coffee? No, I wouldn't. I would not add more coffee. Because let's say you really like it. We never change the amount of coffee, right? That's what we'd like to do. Is what we try to do is we want to have everything as controlled as possible. So our machine, our workaday barista doesn't necessarily have to worry about the machine. Someone like myself, or in my role in operations, or yourself at home, you do have to worry about this. So once you have your machine set up, so the temperature that you want, delivering the pressure that you want, that should, with a decent enough machine, that should stay relatively consistent. So you don't necessarily have to worry about those factors. What you do have to worry about now is the actual mechanical process of making your espresso, right? How much coffee are you dosing, right? So 18 grams. Are you able to control that? You can control the type of coffee that you're using, and that's the other part is that the more you understand the coffee you're using, the greater your capacity over making your coffee. But we're going to use a certain amount of coffee. We want to, and I'll work with baristas to get consistent styles of, dosing, distribution, and then tamping methodology, right? We want people, so the hard thing is that as we tamp, right, you have to work on your tamping technique, because really a lot of times you can be off. Like as you and this is why I always recommend taking your coffee, your tamper, putting it on the coffee, and then feeling your way around. And when I mean feeling, like I'm actually using these two fingers, right? Opposing fingers. And I'm touching this edge here. On another screen, I'm touching the top edge of the tamper piston, and the bottom edge, the top edge of the piston, and the top edge atop of the rim of the basket. And I'm using those as reference points, right? So I'm gauging to feel, is the gap between, is this space right here? Can you see that? Gosh, I wish I could zoom in on this camera, but is this, oh gosh, let me hold this correctly. Okay, let's see if we can simulate this. When you actually put the coffee in, right? Oh yeah, let's just grind some more coffee. We're at the very dregs of the grinder now. I don't know if you could hear that, but basically the grinder is empty. Okay, so like I said, we dosed our coffee, right? You can see here that there is a low point, high points over here, and kind of medium here. I want to distribute the coffee. So this is what we want. We want even distribution of the coffee across the basket. So I'm going to push it this way and across it. I could push it all the way, but then we're going to lose coffee. I don't want to lose coffee, right? So you just kind of have to work it around until you get the coverage that you want. Right, there we go. Now, I'm going to take this tamper. I'm going to put it on top of the coffee, and I'm compacting it down. And that little mound in the center, like Naomi asked before, is going to spread out a little bit. Let's go back over here. And so now, this is the viewpoint, right? So I'm using my two fingers, right, like this, and I'm using them as opposing reference points. And what I'm doing is I want to see, like, where is the gap? Like here right now, right? So as I'm twisting around my pointing finger, the gap between the basket rim and the top of the piston is getting closer. It's getting closer. This is getting further. So I know that that's off, right? So that's off. Like if you look here, it's all falling apart, but it's very difficult doing this, vertically. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move my fingers as I go around, and I'm actually pressing down on the higher part, right? So what I want is that I want to have the tamper be, I'm just manipulating, and just manipulating it. So I'm manipulating it here so that it is pretty much even all the way around, right? So that helps to give us a level bed of coffee, right? Now, at this point, it's ready for tamping. So at this point, can I do this here? What do we have here that I can compress on? Yes. So I can now take this, well, that did not work. Have I nothing with enough height to do this? Here we are. Little card file. So now I can take this, and now I can then take and tamp. Give a little compression, a little bit of a twist. The twist is really just to make this smooth, right? And then we get rid of these. Any kind of debris that's on here, I like to get rid of. Also, any kind of debris that may be left on the rim, we want to get rid of that so that we remove. So this can be clean, so it has a clean surface to mate with the gasket and help to provide a good seal. Now, my particular machine here, I've been neglectful of the gasket maintenance. I do need to buy a new gasket or dispersion screen, probably. I think this only comes, the gaskets, I don't think you get separate. Or maybe I can just fit a Lumberzogo gasket on it. I don't know. But as your gasket gets older, it gets harder, it gets more brittle. So it starts to have more difficulty to create a really good seal. So that's when you really have to make sure that as the harder and older your gasket gets, you got to make sure that you scrub it clean, especially if you want to be cheap and you want to extend the life as much as possible. So you don't want to have that expense. Make sure that it's clean on a regular basis. And then you got to, like, the harder and more brittle it becomes, the harder you're going to have to lock it in. It'll still work until it cracks, and then you're kind of hosed. Coffee Cove, how are you, man? I'm not a pro at espresso, but that is what happened to me a few times on some pulls. Got some wet pucks, went coarser, and solved it. One, I choked the machine that's right. One, I choked the machine bad, removed the port filter. Oh, yeah, it happens. It happens to all of us, man. Don't worry, you are not alone in that. Yeah, so I think that's a great example. Yeah, if that Coffee Cove says it really the wetness will happen, I guess, mostly when there's too much resistance. See, but back to why was I talking about all this? I was talking about all this. Oh yeah, if we do all of this, and this is where the training for the barista comes in for me. It's like we spend a lot of time training them to do this consistently, because the only quantity that I want a barista to be concerned about to adjust is the grind setting itself, right? Everything else should be consistent and hopefully uniform. as far as their processes. That way they only now have the grind to worry about. Because, like, for example, if you're having issues with the way you tamp, the pressure of the tamp, or let's say every time they do it, they're slightly off. Well, this kind of like, and this is exaggerated, but this kind of uneven tamping can lead to channeling, because now it may push everything down. If you have enough coffee, that may not happen, because if you're actually compacting the distribution screen against the top of the coffee with like a lot of coffee, then it might not be as big of an issue in that respect, because it'll kind of compact it down. I've never actually tested that part of it, but the key is that the more variables that you can control, the less variables that remain random. And if you can narrow it down to one variable, the grind, and that is the random one, then it becomes much easier to troubleshoot your espresso making issues than it would be if you don't have it. So for example, if I'm varying the amount of dose tremendously, like let's say, I don't know, your idea is 18, but you're only putting 16, or the next time you put 19 or 20. And you've already set the grind for your 18 grams. Now that grind is set for so much quantity of coffee, so much particulate size to come together in that matrix to provide a certain amount of resistance. As that changes, right? Like let's say you don't do good distribution, and you've got now like the channeling happening. You know, the matrix is not evenly distributed, so there's going to be channeling. If you don't understand that and understand that your distribution is off and you're pulling your shots, you're like, wow, it came out really fast. I need to crank down and make it finer. Oh, now you're going finer, which may work, which may be okay if you have the channeling. But then once you like do the next one and you're the way your distribution's uneven, that collapses again, and then now it's too slow, and now you're too much resistance, right? Or if you end up adding another factor where your temp is uneven and you have this sloping on your puck, now you've got three variables that are in flux, right? And as you adjust, and you only think that it's one, and you're trying to adjust for that, and if these other two things, or even one variable is also in flux, man, it becomes. I learned this the hard way. It becomes very difficult to pull ideal shots of espresso when you're chasing so many variables. So the big thing really that we teach is that we want you to develop your skills so that you can have only one variable that is actually that needs to actually be changed. Because the coffee is the one thing we don't really have that much control over, right? Like we try to have a stable environment. We try to buy nice quality coffee, but that coffee, no matter what coffee it is, that coffee can be in a state of flux depending on a whole variety of issues, right? And so that's the one thing that we want to leave to control, right? So that, and this way, if we have, especially if you're working with a group of people, a team of people, and they're all like in a coffee shop environment, they're all working in and out or around each other. And as they insert and pull out and go back in, they can continue with the same technique, and you will have very little variance. So the idea is that even if you have multiple baristas working across the whole day, the amount of times that they actually need to adjust the grind should be very minimal, because really they should all be operating at the same level, ideally. Naomi says, I forgot to mention, I also use a puck screen. Okay. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with using a puck screen. I know a lot of people think there's great advantage to it. I don't necessarily know if there really is or not, because I don't really use them. Actually, I asked Matt if I could borrow his, because I wanted to use it for a little while to see a little bit more about it, but I don't really know anything about it. I know like someone like Anton puts the paper filters in their pucks too. I don't know about that either. And I think are you getting some kind of control over that, or is it more for helping to keep your dispersion screen clean? I haven't really noticed Like as far as if the latter is the case, where the dispersion screen is getting dirtier and you want to keep it clean, I haven't really noticed that much of an issue over the years. But I'm also working in an environment where we are dropping the screens daily, at the minimum daily, and totally cleaning the machine out every day. So it's a little bit of a different process. And I use a self-leveling tamper. Self-leveling tampers are cool. But I think that, if you can, I do encourage people to consider going for like a regular, like an old school style tamper and really learning the technique. I mean, it's not easy. Like, I won't say that, like 20 plus years down the road, yeah, I can make it look easy. And hopefully I can explain it in a way that new baristas can understand it and grasp onto it readily. Like, I think the girls at the food market have been a good example. They've done fairly well with these techniques, but I think it's just a nice approach to the craft to do it with. There is a learning curve. There is a little bit of pain that will happen. So I can't say there isn't. Anton, what's going on, man? How are you? I used to use a self-leveling tamper, but it has these frills, and cleaning it is annoying. I wonder which one you have. So I now use the palm tamper from my Flair. Once Morrow is here, it's back to a classic tamper. Oh, this Morrow, man. I hope you get it soon. It's so exciting. And Braxton, how are you, Braxton? Good to see you. I replaced the linear group gasket that was a few years old recently, and it was, yeah, I have to say, I've seen those quite a few times. Not always from other people. The puck screen is really helpful. Okay. But what do you use? Like, what's the idea behind the puck screen? Like, I don't know if I know any professionals that really use one. So it's, again, there are certain tools that are out there that have really been, I think, strongly in the domain of the home enthusiast rather than the professional. Because I think that it's always a question of like, how much of the process do you want in a professional environment? It's a question of how much of the process are you willing to slow down, right? Like, there's a certain level of efficiency. So for every bit of tooling that you're using, let's say I use this, and then eventually I'll go to the WDT, right? The WDT, this is the WDT, right? Okay. And I want to do the raking. Like, I think I just kind of like that. At least the motion part, right? But and then the distribution tool. I thought the distribution tool would be kind of cool. I was like, oh, that's kind of, because even in a professional environment, there are times where we are looking to see, are there newer processes that we can use that can shortcut the process? Like, it's like, for me as an operator, there's always the balance, right? It's like there's the question of how difficult is it to bring a barista to speed? Like, for me, it's always been like 2 months. With the girls from the food market, it was a question of like a week. So I really had to accelerate their training program, which I wasn't sure if I could do. Like, I wasn't sure if it'd be too fast. They actually did very well. So I mean, I surprised myself with that, right? Because my expectation is always slow. Like, a typical training schedule at Spro was, when you're hired, is that you come in, we start training you, and we train you 2 hours a day. Partially because I just don't feel like training for more than 2 hours. I don't want to do an 8-hour marathon. I'd rather do 2 hours and focus on certain tasks. But, in this case, we had to do faster. So it was a lot more intensified. But, they responded very well, I thought. And so it just takes time to practice and learn these techniques. But I think once you have them, they're with you, and you don't need anything. Like, really, I really don't. If I was to travel and make coffee, espresso, this is all that I would. If I was to bring it, I would bring this, or maybe not this one. This is my original. I'd probably bring this one, or I don't know. I'd bring one of them. Or I wouldn't bring anything. Actually, I wouldn't bring anything at all. I'd just be like, whatever you have there, we will make coffee with. I'm really a big proponent of like just making coffee like however you can. For me, it's always the home, whether your home setup or your home shop setup, your shop setup, your working environment. That's where you get all of the niceties, right? That's where you get all of the, like, you can get everything perfect and set up and everything's in its place and you have the exact tools you want. But when you're in the field, it's like, okay, how do we make this happen? How can we be ballers without anything? Right? Like we've conjured, in my experience, we've conjured up, whole coffee competitions without any equipment. We had to go out and scrounge espresso machines and beg and plead and steal from them and like find all these kind of things. So I always find that challenge to be a lot of fun. Mary says, I think it'd be a waste of time to use a puck screen in a professional setting. I mean, there could be, and that's why I'm asking you guys what you think about them and why are you, because I'm curious to know, like, as much as I may be like about things, there is a part of it that's also like, can it be used how can we use it to be a more compelling experience, right? So that's I guess that's what I was leading to. So you can add additional complexity, which slows down the process or makes it perhaps less efficient. But if there's really something to be gained from that, experiential wise, then perhaps it's worth considering, right? Like we may do things like the siphon, which is a very intensive, complex, and slow method of preparing coffee. But we do it because there's certain advantages to that over, let's say, a V60 or just over a batch brewer, right? So those are the things that I think about, like when it comes to coffee, is on how we might add to the experience. So it's not just about super fast efficiency; it's also about the experience for the guest. And like, when we're training baristas, right? And I'm sure all of you have experienced it at some point where whatever you do in the world, you're going at it, and then suddenly you're like overwhelmed and you're in the weeds, right? So in restaurant hospitality terms, there's something called in the weeds, where you've got so much going on that you're starting to make mistakes. You're starting to like screw things up, right? Because you're deep into it, right? And this is where I teach the baristas, like, when you get to that point where like things are like, or I'm in trouble, the natural response to that is to speed up, right? I need to go faster. I need to work faster, right? And things start to fall apart. Like, let's say we have a setup where we have everything in a certain place. Well, and you always put things back when you're finished. Well, when you start to fall in the weeds and you start to panic, that all goes to hell, right? Like, you're just like, okay, I'm gonna grab this and just drop it there, whatever. Now it's no longer in its home place. It's going to be in your way. And so you try to go faster, and then the faster you try to go, the more mistakes you're going to make. And those mistakes now start to compound and you're really screwing yourself, right? So we try to teach the baristas that, okay, when you reach this point, stop. Totally counterintuitive to what most people think, but stop for a moment, reassess, and then continue on. But now continue more deliberately, slower even, because even though you feel like, I'm going slower, you're actually going to be going faster because now you have control over what you're doing. And that's the whole thing that we try to teach with baristas in a commercial environment, that there's going to be times when like the lines get busy, customers get maybe a little bit anxious, and you need to focus. Just stop for a moment and focus. And that's what happens to me whenever I fall into that kind of like, I could be falling in the weeds. It's like, let me stop for a moment, slow it down, and then continue on. Because now you can like be more deliberate. Make sure that instead of grabbing the tool, using it, putting it down because like you're in a rush, make sure you put it back. That way, you already know, your motor skills already know that it's there. If you now have to hunt for it, you've just burned more time. Right? So this way, you put it back, even though you want to like drop it and run off to the next thing. Put it back, go do the thing, and then don't go faster, just go slower, more intentional. And I think this is true for any pursuit in life, right? Anton says, if you get an easy method of taking out the puck screens and cleaning them and keeping them warm, maybe not. So do you have to keep the puck screens warm? See, here's the interesting thing. Like, I can see why you'd want to keep the puck screens warm, because we try to keep everything warm, right? But with this new ball thing, I guess it's not so new anymore, right? The ball, the whiskey ball that you pull the espresso over to cold chill extraction, the one that the guy from Switzerland, Zurich, the University of Zurich, Uretzian, pioneered. I wonder though if even if you didn't keep your puck screens warm and cool, the room temperature, if you put that on top, would that necessarily, could that maybe that cooling effect might be a benefit, right? Because it'll only be cool for a moment. And I wonder, like, even if you left it in your room environment and you put it on top of here and then you locked it up into your portafilter, now ostensibly, and this is going to depend on how much coffee you have, but now that stainless steel puck screen is now compressing against the dispersion screen, which is going to have a transference of heat to that stainless puck screen, which I think will be pretty fast. Like, especially if you're like, if you're one of those baristas that kind of dilly-dally after you put in the, you put in your, like, you lock it in, you're like, okay, let me go get my cup and let me go prepare something and let me go talk. If you're one of those, that transference of heat, I think, will happen. So by the time you hit the brew switch, it's already, and then once you hit the brew switch, that water that's coming out at 200 degrees or whatever the temperature, it's going to hit that screen and it's going to bring that temperature up faster. It's going to bring it up pretty fast. So I don't know. This is just theory. Don't get me wrong. I have no practical experience with this, but I'm just theorizing that perhaps with the puck screen, you don't necessarily have to worry about keeping it warm. Maybe. Again, best to taste test. Rusty, Happy New Year, man. Congrats on 5 years. Thank you very much, man. Good to see you. Always good to see you. Hope your New Year's was good. And a magnet tool to take the puck screens out. Oh, so the puck screens are not stainless, or they don't have that much nickel in them? Neighbor says, I mainly use it to keep the shower screen area cleaner, much easier to rinse out and wipe down. Okay. So do you make sure that you do like a chemical clean on your puck screens as well? Like a Cafeza or OxyClean? And it says, the saying slow down to speed up is so true. Yeah, man, you know, Braxton, you know. Coffee Cove says, if I use it, I use it. English, sometimes it's so difficult to read. I use it if I make espresso. Some videos watched or articles read said it would help keep the group clean, but I did have to brush the group a few times. I can't say if it's worth it. Don't use it much. And don't use the espresso machine much right now. Oh, I see. Yeah, I actually don't use my espresso machine much at all, unless we're doing a live stream that we're actually making espresso. Otherwise, it kind of sits quietly here in the corner. Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I know people. I guess people say that it helps to keep things cleaner. I guess keep the group clean. I don't know if that's. I don't know if that's really true because, once the pressure builds, right? I think the coffee oils are, and this is why we clean the machines, right? Like, if you let your machine run for a little while, and then you pull the dispersion screen down, that brass block is dirty. It's brown, it's black, or whatever color it may be. Depends on how long it's been since you cleaned it. But it's going to have some dirt buildup. So I don't know if you add another screen to it, if that's going to help keep it cleaner. I mean, it's going to pressurize, it's going to fill, it's going to start extraction the moment that it happens. So the coffee, the water that happens to be in here that is now filling the entire interior of the group head is going to have coffee oils and sediment or particulates. And it's going to, after you stop, it's going to settle, even though we are flushing the group head. So I don't know if that's really going to be, it could be like the marketing thing. Like, oh, this is going to help you do this. No, it's not. It's still going to get dirty. I still have to clean it. Like, make something that I don't have to clean. And then I'll be very excited. Right? Now I have an extra piece to clean. But that's not that terrible. You just kind of toss that into your, like when you clean your baskets and stuff like that, I just toss them into a Cafe's OxyClean bath. So if I had those dispersion screens go in there, dispersion nuts go in there, everything goes in there. And then like if I had a puck screen, toss that in there too. I don't think it adds too much complexity as far as cleaning. At least I wouldn't expect. I do Cafesa for the screens. Good. Yeah, you should Cafesa everything. Again, OxyClean unscented from Costco comes like $15 in a huge box. Like you probably, at the rate that we use it, probably will be using that box till we're dead. So there's plenty of, I know manufacturers probably hate me for saying things like that, but I was years ago, I was like, man, the cost of Cafesa is considerable. And I was thinking, and then I remember reading somewhere it's an oxygen-based cleaner. I was like, oxygen-based cleaner? What about OxyClean? So I started looking at the MSDS and trying to find the ingredients of them. And the ingredients of like Cafesa, Ernex, and OxyClean, when you look at the chemical ingredients, they're not exactly the same. But when you read about the chemical ingredients, they're pretty much the same. And so I was like, you know what if I just use the unscented? So I tried it. I did a test run with it, and man, the results were perfect. Like there was no residual flavor, there's nothing, there's no smell, everything is, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a chemist, I don't have enough scientific understanding to know the difference, but I found almost no difference between the three products. So we stopped buying that stuff. We just started buying OxyClean at Costco because it was much more efficient that way. Oh my gosh, it's already past seven. Let's pull this one last shot that we have it, since I've already got it prepared. It's been sitting here cooling down. Will that result? And so we ground it, put it in the portafilter where it was pretty warm. Now it's totally cool. There's a little bit of residual heat here. In my world, this would be like, I would be freaking out, right? Like at that cafe, be like, what are you doing, man? It's been saying we can't use that. We can't serve this to us. But for ourselves, we can certainly serve it to ourselves and see what happens. Will this affect the coffee? So let's have a look. Oops, wrong button. Let's flush out again. Get the flow going on here. Good. Uh-oh. Like I said, we have a few moments before we have to put the cup down. Oh, it feels longer. All right, here it comes. Oh, it's really loose. Oh, the crema's not very good. Oh, that's not nice. Stop right there. That was not very nice. And let's have a look here. As you can see, there's big, this came out really fast. So that time sitting around was just not pleasant for this coffee. Did not do us any favors. The crema's not bad. Like if you look here, there's still some reddish brown crema, a lot of blonding here. So we let it run a little bit longer, which means that we probably have some kind of residual oils in the basket. Let's have a look here. And you can see compaction. Oh, so there's less coffee in here than I was using for the first shot. Not as little as the second, but certainly there's a difference because of the way that. And as you can see here, look at that right there. Boom. There's a little bit of coffee oils right there. So slightly over extracted. We're pushing into the over extraction phase. I wouldn't expect it to be that over extracted or to be too harsh, but just to know we're getting a little bit into that. So now let's look at our little cookie here. Oh, it's a little bit more crumbly. That came apart a lot easier than the first one. Not as easy as the second. And this one, I guess it will do that. If I don't do it as forceful, it doesn't crumble. And then we have our shot. Let's have a taste of it. It actually looks not bad. Like that's not terrible looking. So here's a shot that is now somewhere between these two, right? If this has the best body richness and flavor, and this is like a lot lesser of a coffee, this is actually in between. And we saw that progression now, right? With the pucks, with the baskets, we see the progression between the three. If you correlate them all, that, you know, this would be the best one, this would be the next best, and this would be the least best. Let's have more taste of this. And we need to have it with some of the Biko. Tadakimasu. Not bad, not bad. Braxton says that Cafeza works great for almost anything coffee cleaning related. Ah, yes. Cafeza is good stuff. Good stuff. I'm not saying that's not. I'm just saying that I'm cheap. I'm cheap. All right. So that's it for today. Thank you very much for tuning in. I hope this gives some insight into espresso making. If not, well, thanks for hanging out anyway. We're back again tomorrow with another episode of the Coffee Q&A. And it's the first day of the year, so happy 2025. I hope it's going to be a wonderful year for you with a lot of highs, more highs than lows, and a lot of happiness. All right, so yeah, there it is. Thank you very much for tuning in, and see you next time. You too, Bo, man. Happy New Year to you. See you, Dylan.